Welcome to episode 104 of the Toadstool Boardroom for the week of September 4th, 2024. I'm Logan Plant, joined this week, as always, by Justin Corice.
What's up, Logan? Long time no see.
I know, right? At least in here, it's been a couple weeks. We had an asylum last week. I was not here for it. Good job holding down the fort, guys. Chris Shriver's here, too. Hey, Chris.
Hey, how's it going?
And my favorite revelation from the asylum was that Justin likes visual novels now. That was a huge reveal that happened while I was away. Justin, do you think that's a trend that's going to continue, or is it a one-off thing?
It will depend on the quality of the property. I think I'm willing to try one or two more things. So we'll see how long we write it out. Also need to just accept the fact that it's probably going to take me a very, very, very long time to get all the way through one.
Yeah, that's just how it goes these days. Trying to get through stuff that you don't have to actively play for work, I feel like can be really, really hard for us. And Chris is playing Emio, the Smiling Man, Famicom Detective Club. We're going to hear all about those thoughts in a bit. We're going to hear about the coolest things that we saw at PAX West. But let's start with the coolest thing that we saw at PAX West, which is The Legend of Zelda, Echoes of Wisdom. Justin and I both got a chance to go hands-on with this. We played the show floor demo together, and then we also each got to go behind closed doors to play it at an event with Nintendo. We also both played Super Mario Party Jamboree. Can't talk about that one quite yet, so stay tuned for our thoughts on that. But Echoes of Wisdom, Justin, famously, you were not huge on this after its initial reveal back in the Nintendo Direct in June. So let's start with you. You've played it for over an hour now. What do you think?
I like that you described that as famously. Yeah.
It's our most viewed episode ever. It is pretty famous.
Well, in that case, maybe I should say more terrible things about this. No, it was great. It was absolutely wonderful. I had the best time with it. There were two different demos, as you alluded to. There was the public demo, which we basically just sprinted right through the very first hour of PAX to get up to the front of the line to play as quickly as possible. And then they had a different demo in a behind closed door session. And it's cool because we got to see two different chunks of the game. We saw the opening section of the game shortly after whatever I'm sure the opening cinematic is, with a really cool, kind of Ocarina of Time-esque Prison Break, except it's remixed using the various echo abilities of Princess Zelda. And it is so fun and so clever. Though it is so much in line with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, the way that you can summon objects, use them in ways that make sense, use them in ways that don't make sense. So if you can picture this beginning segment, for example, you're trying to scoot past a bunch of guards without getting caught, and you can do things like place objects to block their field of vision, to block their path so they can't get to you. So you can climb on top of bookcases. At one point, you get an echo of a jar that you can throw and distract them with a shattering sound, or you can do what I did and set the jar on the ground and then jump inside the jar, and you only peek your head out when you're trying to move. It's hilarious. It's so funny. It's so fun.
Yeah, that was like the Wind Waker barrel, like when you're sneaking around the Forsaken Fortress.
Oh, absolutely.
And you pick up a barrel and drop it on yourself. And that moment was the moment I knew we were in for something special because that was the show floor demo on day one of PAX, and we're next to each other on separate screens, and I just hear you laugh, and I look over at your screen, and you are just inside this pot, and Zelda's poking her head out. It's like, oh my gosh, I wouldn't have thought to try that, and it just worked, and that's when I knew this had the sauce of Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, we got to play another section exploring a bit of the overworld, and then there's a little village you can go into, and then the first dungeon up through the first boss, and it's all great. And they're real dungeons. They're actual, honest to goodness dungeons with keys and puzzles and enemies, and the way that you deal with the enemies using your different echoes is really funny. And different enemies have different abilities and weaknesses. At one point I fought Darknut, and frankly he was just absolutely destroying all of my echoes that I could summon. And so trying to figure out how to approach him was really cool, really interesting. That's another sort of thing that you and I approach in two completely different ways, which from what we talked about. And everything was that way. Eventually you get to are we spoiling everything that we did in the...
Yeah, I think so. I
think that's
fair.
fair.
We're just not supposed to talk about solutions to puzzles is the main thing.
Okay. And then it ends with a boss fight against Talus, and it was amazing because Talus has a big glowing spot. You get the ability, what's the ability where you grab and pull stuff?
Bind.
you get this bind ability, right, where you can grab and yank stuff, and you can yank that little orb out of them, and then just beat the heck out of the orb, kind of like getting the eye out of like a Stalnox in Breath of the Wild. And so I did that for a while. At one point, he slams his hands on the ground, so I just stuck a Deku Baba on top of that. With like those are the big like plant guys, right?
Yeah.
I want to make sure I get the names right. And so it just starts like snapping at him and does a bunch of damage. That worked great. At one point, I threw a trampoline on the ground and I jumped off the trampoline, and then I used the sword fighter mode to try and do like a jumping attack and do blows on land blows on him. You can throw down a bed and rest, and if you rest long enough, you start to recover hearts. So after I got punched, I threw a bunch of big rocks on the ground to try and build a fort around the bed, and then try to sleep in the bed. And he just punched me right through the rocks. It was great. I loved it. It's funny, it's creative, it is everything I could possibly ask for. I think this is a game of the year contender. It rules.
Yeah, I would be surprised if this doesn't end up being my game of the year, even from just the 1 hour that I played. Yeah. I just absolutely fell in love with it right away, and it was the feelings that I hoped I would have going into it. I'm such a puzzle guy. I love Zelda puzzles, and I adore Tears of the Kingdom, and I like Breath of the Wild, as you all know. But I think something that they really lacked was the same kind of handcrafted puzzles. There are certainly puzzles in those games, but they tend to be the kind of sandboxy, physics-based, okay, Tears of the Kingdom, it has this gem that unlocks the shrine. How are you going to get it from point A to point B? And you're going to build something really cool to fly it across this gap, and then you drop the jewel into the slot, right? That's kind of how the puzzles and solutions work in those games. But in Echoes of Wisdom, at least what we've seen so far, it is very classic 2D Zelda top-down handcrafted puzzles. And the dungeon was just amazing. It is, you walk in, you need small keys, there's a linear way to progress through this dungeon. It's not the open area Divine Beast. It's not the small shrine that takes less than 5 minutes to complete. This is a Link to the Past style dungeon with a dungeon map and everything, and that was so exciting to see because we didn't really know how they were going to handle that. I felt in the trailers we'd seen to this point, they were really not showing us specifically what this game's version of a dungeon was going to look like. So I was super happy to see that, and just knowing there's going to be more of these to explore and uncover in the game. And Justin, what we saw was the first dungeon in the game, and it was great. For this being the very first dungeon, I loved what we saw, so I'm super, super excited about that. And then just the echoes, just dropping them around and flipping through the menu to pick which one you want, and thinking about how's this going to interact here. And there is a armadillo guy, I think he's called a Carmadillo.
Yeah, Carmadillo.
And in the preview room that Nintendo hosted us in, they had a cardboard cutout of this Carmadillo, and I was wondering why are they highlighting this guy? This is just some random guy I've never seen before. And then I get the Carmadillo Echo, and you drop it, and it just boulders into enemies and takes them out, and it's clearly one of the most OP echoes in the demo.
Just
okay, now I get it. This guy,
as it goes.
yeah, there's one room where there's a bunch of cardboard boxes and some slime enemies in between them, and if you stand at an angle and drop this Carmadillo, it ping pongs all around there and just took them all out. It's awesome. It's such a cool echo. And yeah, just exploring how everything is going to work, but in a more linear puzzle focused Zelda sense. It is the perfect child between the classic Zelda people miss and the open world learnings from Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. It's brilliant. And Chris, I think you're going to really like this game. I think that it's just going to scratch that Zelda itch that you've been missing, as Tears of the Kingdom is something too big. Here's a really digestible, top-down, almost cozy Zelda experience that I think you're really going to love.
Yeah, I mean, everything that you guys have said and everything that we've seen is like basically it's checking every box. And I'm getting to a weird point with this game where I wish I could go on like media blackout as much as I can, and like to some extent I'm trying to
right now.
Like,
yeah,
no, that's all right. I'm happy to be here and happy to hear everything. But no, like there was a trailer that dropped a couple days ago, or maybe it was sometime last week, right before PAX, that everybody was kind of going off about in our Discord, and I turned it on for about 3 seconds, and I was like, no, like I want to go into this as blind as I can. Outside of Tears of the Kingdom, this is I guess this is the second Zelda game that's come out since I worked at IGN that I haven't like really been locked in on. Like when I did all the social stuff, I'd constantly watch every trailer and like I knew everything that was happening and read every article because like I had to be able to write copy for it. And now I'm at a point where I don't really have to worry about that. And I just want to be able to enjoy this game with fresh eyes. And the top-down 2D uh, stylings of it, or gameplay that this game has, I feel like it limits it in a good way for me. In that, like, it isn't going to be as open, but it is going to give you enough toys, like, to play the game in interesting ways. The way that you guys were describing it, like with the pot and things like that. So no, like, I'm stoked. Like, I have no doubt I'll play this, and this is probably going to be my game of the year.
The thing that I
Yeah.
really appreciate about it is every time I saw a potential Echo or got a new Echo, I was so excited to try it out and see what it did. And
Yeah.
I can play. There's at least in the small chunk that we got, there's two different rocks that you pick up, and they do different things. They have different properties. Every Echo seems to be not necessarily like seems to be special, seems to be unique, seems to do its own thing. And playing around with that was so much fun. Like, I loved when I defeated a Keys for the first time and started sending just squadrons of them at my enemies to like overcome everybody. It was so much fun. And then, like, don't sleep on how big that bind ability is. You use it in a ton of different ways to move obstacles. You use it on enemies. You use it to solve puzzles. You use it in combination with the other echoes in cool and crazy ways. Like, you could bind yourself to like an enemy and then jump on a trampoline, and they're going to go every bit as high up in the air as you do. There's so many different cool creative ways that you can do it, and it gave me that same sense that I had early in Tears of the Kingdom, where like I started just scotch taping everything I could find together to see what kind of horrible monstrosity I could assemble. And that was some of the most fun I had in that. And that's going to be basically a big part of the experience here.
Is
Yeah,
there a
and
limit to how many things that you can bind? Like, did you guys
Yes.
try to break
oh,
that
you
in
can
any
bind. You
capacity?
can only bind one
One
thing
thing,
at a
yeah.
time.
Okay, I didn't know if it was like make the world's longest pole like you can in
In
Tears of the
Tears?
Kingdom.
No,
Yeah.
no. There doesn't have it's Ultra Hand, but without the gluing function,
Mhm.
right? So you can pick up
Got
one
it.
thing at a time, and then you can't move it freely. It moves as Zelda moves. Its movement is mirrored 1-to-1 with
It's
Zelda.
it's
Got
it's
So
it.
if I'm
it's
standing
almost
5 feet,
like the like what Dominion Rod from Twilight Princess.
oh yeah, wow, it's
Okay.
very much like that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great call. I had not thought about that, but it's totally like that. Yeah, you grab something, it moves as you move. So if there's like something on the other side of a fence,
Mhm.
maybe you grab it with bind and then walk to where it needs to go. Maybe that's something that you could do in a hypothetical situation. So yeah, it's really really cool. And then how you can bind to your echoes is also awesome, because Zelda, before you get the sword fighter form a little bit through the first dungeon, you are pretty powerless, and you have to really rely on your echoes or on bind to just throw things off cliffs to be able to defeat them. And so you get an echo very early on of the kind of spiky. They look like the Gordos
Urchin.
from Kirby.
You're talking about the urchin.
Black ball, the urchin. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know what the Zelda name is for that, but you get
They're
you get
they're
the
called
echo
sea
of
urchins,
that.
I think.
Oh, they
In-game.
are? Okay,
Yeah.
very cool. And I, that's the one thing in Zelda that's actually called something normal, not like Carmadillo or Zol is the name of like the choo choo slime in this game for some reason. But you
I'm
grab
the
the sea urchin,
keymaster.
and then I was just ramming into this dark nut with it just to deal damage. And like walk forward, hit it back up, walk forward, hit it back up. And it's just the ways you come up to do stuff with are really, really fun and really, really creative.
Well, and then you have the reverse bind, right, where you tether yourself to an object the same way, but then that object gets to control your movement, and that's used in
Mhm.
interesting ways to traverse areas, and that'll be used in puzzles in a lot of cool ways. It's
Yeah.
it's like it's a two-way street, and you basically toggle which thing is in control, and I like that a lot. I did want to ask you, Logan.
Mhm.
I know that you were initially you weren't super thrilled with the sword fighter form. Now that you've had a
Yeah.
chance to use it, how's that changed your opinion on the inclusion of that?
Yeah, so to set a little background, in that trailer that Chris only watched a few seconds of last week, sorry Chris, they reveal that Zelda does get a sword fighter form extremely early on in the first dungeon of the game, right? That is something that you acquire probably within the first 30 minutes of the game. And I was disappointed because, as you all know, I was really hoping that this would be the Zelda game without a sword, and it's not. But it is very limited, right? The gauge in the top left corner says level 1, and if you're even thinking it runs out like as fast as the Master Sword does in Tears of the Kingdom, no, it's way faster than that. Level 1 only gets you what, Justin? 10 seconds probably of sword fighting
It's
play.
not long, yeah.
Yeah, not long at all. And so I was worried, oh, is it just going to be about stalling for time until you can get back to that sword? And no, it doesn't feel like that. The main example you use it is in the boss of the first dungeon. You might still not want to listen, Chris. I can wave to you when you want to come back. In the boss of the very first dungeon, you basically, it's the classic Zelda boss formula of go through this phase until you expose its weak point and then wail on its weak point until it recovers and rinse and repeat, right? This classic kind of 3-stage thing. And once you expose its core, that's when you break into sword fighter mode. So you're still using bind and you're still using echoes. You're still using Zelda's very unique moveset to expose that weak point, and then that's when you break out the sword fighter form. So it was fun, at least in this first instance, to strategically decide when do you want to break out that sword fighting form to then wail on the boss's weak point. So it remains to be seen how far into the game you upgrade that level 1 gauge, and maybe level 2, 3, 4, maybe then you have the sword for a lot longer and the echoes start to take a back seat. That I still wouldn't like, and I know I can limit myself and choose to not do that, but I don't like a game designed where you have to choose to limit yourself to get the experience you want, right? I like to play the game as it's intended and get that experience. So I'm hoping the sword doesn't become too prevalent, but from what we saw, it didn't bug me.
Agreed.
You want to talk about the sword, or should we let Chris back?
We'll let Chris back in.
Okay.
And then I can't believe that it turns out you were Ganon the entire time. Oh, Chris, you're back.
I know. Oh, sorry. Oh,
hey,
shoot.
guys.
Oh, no. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, Chris, this is probably the last week we talk about it. You won't have to worry about it too much.
It's okay.
Dancing
I'm
around.
good.
Although,
Yeah.
depending on some of these questions.
That's true.
I mean, it's fine. It's pretty hard to avoid this when you're a host on a Nintendo podcast. I'm just trying to do the best I can.
So this time, Chris, Zelda is the princess.
Yeah, just this once. It's
Are
a
you
crazy
kidding?
change.
Amazing, right?
Oh
Yeah.
my god.
Should we get into these questions, Justin, or do you have something
think
else
so.
you wanted to talk about?
No.
Okay, let's do it. So let's see. Sam sent us a bunch of questions to toadstoolboardroom@gmail.com. And Sam asks, is there a gauge or time limit for how long echoes can remain on screen or in combat? What did you notice about this, Justin?
Yeah, there is, and I will say the most important thing about that gauge is that it doesn't regenerate on its own, right? It's not like you can, like you're saying, it's not like you can use it, stall, use it, stall, use it, stall. You actually have to pick something up to regenerate it, which makes it frankly more valuable. It's similar to like the magic meter from previous Zelda titles.
I was gonna say it's like a consumable, like that magic potions you would pick up in like Ocarina.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think is the right way to make it feel like you want to save it and use it at the most opportune moment.
Yeah. So Sam asks, how many echoes can you summon at once? And the answer to that, it's a little complicated. Tri basically has 3 units of power that are trailing her to start the game. And each echo has its own distinct cost. A table costs 1 unit, a moblin costs 2, a dark nut costs 3. So you can summon as many of those units that you have. So 3 tables, 1 table and a moblin, or 1 dark nut. And then if you summon beyond that limit, the first thing that's the oldest thing that's left out on the battlefield disappears. So if you summon 4 beds, that first bed you summoned is gone. And you're going to be able to increase this Tri's unit currency as the game goes. We don't know how that's going to work yet, but eventually you'll be able to summon more than just 3 units worth of stuff.
Yep.
Which looks cool. I liked how that worked out. It felt like you can't really just totally shatter it right away because you could only summon a few things at a time.
Can you... Sorry. Can you cancel it out after you... Like let's say you cast something... And then if you cancel it out, you're out that like mana or whatever it is.
So there's 2 things you can do. If you can access the object, you can cancel that object specifically, or you can hold the button down and delete everything.
Got it.
Yeah, which worked really nice. Yeah, I thought it was pretty intuitive. Like I got used to how it all controlled and how it felt pretty fast.
Yeah, and before long, I was using things like small platforms to reach higher areas, and then deleting the old platform to make new platforms to reach higher areas from there. There's one spot when you emerge from out of the interior in the very first portion of the demo, there was a big rock out in some water, and then a broken bridge, and I was able to build platforms to climb up on the rock, then build beds to use as a platform to cross the bridge, and then get to a cave where I did a long side-scrolling section. So it's really actually easy and intuitive.
Yeah, and actually, you just reminded me of something in the demo we talked about. I remember that I wanted to bring up, which was very early on. You're in a side-scrolling cave, like Link's Awakening has the side-scrolling sections. That's back here too, and you're in this little tunnel that is blocked by a boulder, and that boulder can be pushed into this pool of water that's ahead of you, and the boulder sinks to the bottom, and then sitting in the pool is a crate that's floating, resting at the top, and Justin and I were just appreciating how that is Nintendo teaching you, hey, boulders sink and wooden things float, and that's how you're going to navigate the water. And there was no text box tutorial to tell you that stuff. It just displayed it to you, and I just really appreciated that small detail. Justin, would you think the demo was too chatty overall, or did you like kind of how much they were talking to us?
I could forgive how much it was talking in
Seems like there's a lot they have to teach you.
Well, and any Zelda game is typically chattiest right at the beginning when it's filling you with scenario and exposition and stuff like that, and there certainly was plenty of that in part 1 of the demo. So like, it didn't bother me from a gameplay standpoint. I certainly was like eager to get to the game and pass the dialogue as quick as possible, but I don't have any reason to think that it's going to be enough to be like an annoyance.
How was navigating, and obviously you didn't have that many, but how was navigating the echoes themselves in a submenu?
Very much like Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. There's a few different sort options that you can do. Like you can sort. It did seem like you could sort by object type, which was pretty handy. And I think you can just recall by most recent, which is probably what will be need most of the time.
Cool.
Yeah, this is the biggest but with the Echoes of Wisdom demo. I scrolled through all those options so many times. There's no favorites menu like we were hoping for. Maybe it's something you get later on, but it is.
There is a recent one though.
I think there was a recent. Yeah.
I'm 90% sure I saw one.
Okay.
Yeah, most used, most recent by cost. So how many triangles it costs to use, and by type are the 4 that I remember. So. Yeah, so that's good, but I do wish it was a little bit better because it's still that just one row of everything you have in the entire game to scroll through to pick the thing that you specifically want for this one situation.
One day they'll discover vertical scrolling too, and then game changer.
Also, they're going to see one person with vertical tabs in the office and be like, wait a minute, we could do
that? And I do appreciate that every echo you get goes into a notebook where you can like read about it and get a little bit of information about its like properties, maybe some hints on how to use it.
Yeah. And you can equip it from that pause menu also. So if you really hate that one row thing, you can pause and go into a big grid of everyone you have and scroll through to find the one that you want. So that is another option that's maybe, I don't know, if you want something at the end of your row, it might be faster to do it that way. I'm not sure yet because we don't know how many echoes you're going to end up getting.
Yeah.
Seems like a lot though. Seems like you're going to get a ton of them because in this demo, 20 probably?
Quite a few. God. Quite a few.
Yeah. There were rocks and boxes and crates and beds and spiders
chunks
and slimes
of meat.
And, a trampoline.
Oh yeah, the spiders.
Yeah, there was a ton.
The big spinny plant guy that is just a real hoss out there.
Yeah, yeah, and that one cost 3. So yeah. Speaking of, besides beds, what's your favorite echo to use so far?
Ooh, I would probably go with the keys. Like. I love setting a squadron of key set things. It is so funny. You can lock on so that they'll attack your target, and where you can just let them go and do their thing. And there's just something so funny to me about Zelda just like summoning this swarm of bats to go and take out her enemies.
Yeah, yeah. My favorite was probably. I already said it. It's the armadillo guy. They were so fun to just bowl around. I really liked that. And then the spiders, the way that you can use their webs to climb and things like that is really, really cool. So I liked them a lot as well.
Yeah. And then those spiders are so useful.
Next question from Sam is, does it seem like Sword Fighter form can be leveled up and permanently increased for staying in the form? The most recent trailer gauge had a level 1 next to it. Yeah, we already talked about that a little bit. And Justin, I do want to hear your thoughts on this form. Chris, if you don't want to listen, you can take the headphones off. That's what we were talking about when you were gone.
Earbuds.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was less bothered by it than you were, and I think that they've, at least from what we've played, it seems perfectly balanced. You cannot use it for very long, and frankly, it's not exceptionally powerful. I think that a lot of times you're better off using your echoes to fight your battles. So
Hmm.
as long as it remains that way, I think it's fine the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it'll be all right. And it did open up some cool puzzle solving things too. We won't tell you the solutions to those, but there were times where you're solving a puzzle and then you should switch to sword for just the right moment to do something in this puzzle and then switch back to keep using echoes and stuff. So it's cool. It's almost like, I don't know, it's just like another item in her toolkit rather than it being Link's primary thing.
Yep.
And so I'm okay with that in that context. If it was just Zelda fighting with a sword through the whole game, that'd be a bummer, but they did it in a smart way, so it's good. And then the last question here from Sam on Zelda is, do you all like how info trailers have been being released just as short videos rather than being a part of a longer direct dedicated to it? I kind of like the shorter burst of more info leading up to the game instead of a big info dump a month or so before the game. Either way, the more info, the better. Yeah, I think it's cool how they've done it. They have had 3 trailers, and each one is kind of titled its own thing, and it's a direct follow-up to the last one. The first one's called, like, Stolen Away. It's about these rifts taking everyone away, and they're leaving, and then the second one and the third one have just shown completely different sides of this game, and each one has pulled back the curtain a little more to show a game that's bigger than I think we were expecting it to be, Justin.
I like a slow burn hype cycle. I much
Yeah.
prefer that over just an hour deep dive on every system. I like dissecting 30 seconds to a minute and just really nerding out about it, rather than trying to absorb a big long form thing. Wouldn't mind more, like, maybe, like, I don't know what the final release trailer is going to be like. I'm looking forward to that because those are usually just absolute bangers for Zelda games. But no, I think they've done a great job on this cycle.
Yeah, I've seen enough. I'm with Chris though. I have seen enough. It's this is the first time I've ever gotten to play a Zelda game before it came out, and now I'm like, wait, I have to wait 3 weeks to actually dive in. It's so painful. I just wanted to keep going forever. It was so much fun to the point where after our behind closed doors the next day, Justin and I tried to rush to the show floor to see Monster Hunter Wilds because the line for that was just crazy. And after we parted ways, I went and played Zelda again. I got in line and then played Zelda again before I left the
Should've
show.
known.
It was great, and I sped through the demo as fast as I could. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention was that Zelda has a spin move, which is amazing because it's like the roll in the classic
You
3D
go
Zelda games.
slightly faster when you spin, which
Yeah.
means I'm spinning everywhere.
Everywhere you go will just be a spin, and it's
Does she make
awesome.
a
It's how
noise?
she cuts.
The Dizzy Princess.
What, Chris?
Does she make a noise?
I
Because
don't
that was the whole thing in
remember.
Ocarina. Like,
But
Yeah.
yeah, like,
Yeah, I don't
some kind of
remember
effort.
if she does
Also, there's a map button that you can press that gives you an idea for how big the world is.
oh
And it's
wow!
large. It
seems
is
pretty
really big.
Pretty big.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it's cool. And this time around, there's no towers or anything. You just unlock the map as you explore it, which is cool. And then we also got a quick glimpse at fast travel. There are we've seen these items in all the trailers. There's these little coral-looking statues that are sitting around everywhere, and you activate them, and then that's a beacon on your fast travel map. And there were actually a couple within the dungeon too,
Yep.
so you could leave the dungeon if you wanted, and then come back to it. So very, very cool. I think the last thing we should touch on here is the still world, which is the dark world in this game. We've seen it in all the trailers. It's when she's surrounded by the rifts, and we finally got a chance to explore that a little bit and see what it's all about. Justin, what do you think of this area?
I want to explore it a lot more. I think it's really cool. When you're in it, it really is very, like, things are twisted, things are floating through the air. You see some people who were stuck in this still world, and, like, they are literally, like, still, they're immobile. And it is like, by design, very trippy, almost cosmic. So I want to see how much they do with that, whether they just kind of do exactly that aesthetic and just, like, rinse repeat, or if they get, like, really, if things get more twisted as time goes on, or if certain iconic areas, like the twisted version of those, how they look. Like, is any of the castle over there, what does that look like, you know? And so I'm intrigued to dive into it more.
You know how good it felt to collect a heart piece again? That was so cool. Just really early on, you just are exploring, and you see this little hidden corner. You do a little puzzle, and you get a piece of heart. And that was just something I guess I didn't realize how much I missed just doing little things
I'm
like
glad
that.
it's not just an orb that you gather a bunch of and then spend.
Yeah, it's just, this is classic Zelda. It's got a totally new twist, but I think to its bones, this is A Link to the Past, right?
Mhm.
And that's really, really exciting just to have this back, because
Very
we've
much
wondered
in that
forever, are they going to come back to it? And we weren't sure if this was, and it is. It totally is. Just
It 100%
the way you
is.
interact with that world is completely different and
Mhm.
completely crazy. So yeah, Justin, any other thoughts before we move on from Zelda here, or Chris, any other questions?
I don't think
Cool.
so.
Game of the year.
Yeah, that was Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. It's that or another game that I haven't played yet, Astrobot. I cannot wait to dive into
I've heard a lot of
that
good
game.
things
I
about
think it
Astrobot.
looks
This Friday.
incredible. Yeah, it's going to be a fun weekend jumping into that.
Yeah.
Chris made a PlayStation channel in our Discord, and if you're in the Discord, you know this, but Chris just has a thought. He makes a new channel for that one
Sure
thought,
do.
and then the channel is never used again.
Sure do.
And, yeah, and
We
that
got
was the
one
case this
response.
time.
Yeah, it's
was
not
it?
very
We'll
far
call him
away
out.
from the PGA channel.
The PGA channel. I can't wait to drop like on Father's Day next year. Just a picture of me in my golf uniform, like, you know.
Don't you have a Mario Golf
Ben
Super Rush
said-
bag tag?
I do. I have a Mario Golf Super Rush bag tag on my golf bag, and I wear a Mario polo and red Mario shoes every time I go golfing.
That is really on brand. That's awesome.
Yep.
I love that.
I want to get a. Honestly, I want to get the exact outfit that Wario wears in Super Rush because it's
Oh yeah,
ridiculous. Like he has
yeah,
a yellow cowboy
plaid
hat.
pants. Yeah.
Yep. Purple plaid pants.
Okay, nice.
Oh yeah.
You could pull it off. I'd like to see it.
100%.
That'd be awesome. So that was The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. Awesome to get some hands-on time with it ahead of release, and
I
excited.
feel like we'll talk about that game again one day.
I think we might. Talk about it a boatload one day, very, very soon. It's only 3 weeks away, the day this episode goes up. We are incredibly close. It snuck up on me. The first 2 months went by really fast. I have a feeling these next 3 weeks I'm going to be clock watching maybe a little bit more than I have.
I think
been at this point.
Astrobot will help you through that. Honestly.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, there's so many games to play all the time. So, but Zelda is Zelda. It's a big one, and we can't wait for it. And Justin, it was so cool that we both got to play it, and I loved playing it side by side to kick it off. That was just the best way ever to start PAX West this year. It was super fun.
Perfect start to it.
But speaking of PAX West, there's a lot of other cool Switch games that Justin and I had a chance to see. So, Justin, I want to give you a platform here to shout out anything cool you saw at the show that's coming to Switch.
Oh, so many things. And I'll certainly leave room for you too. There was an event called The Mix showing off a lot of indie games. In this game, they're called The Nightling. I don't know if you got a chance to check that out at all. It's great. Imagine like a big open world adventure game. Honestly, it kind of reminded me of Wind Waker in a lot of ways. It's a 3D adventure game. You play as the Nightling. So basically, you're the squire of like this big mighty knight who has disappeared. All you have is this big giant shield, and you use that for combat. You use that to block. You can slide down hills with it. It's big. It's beautiful. The fact that you are this tiny little, like, you are not the big macho hero trying to save the world, honestly gave me big, like, almost medieval vibes, in that you're like kind of in over your head. So I played around this like village area doing a couple of quests, beating up a couple of like shadow beasts. The combat system, frankly, is a little bit more like an action game. Like I was doing like launches and aerial attacks and things like that. So the Nightling is one that I'm pretty excited about. Another one, by the time you listen to this podcast, you'll be able to read my preview over on digitaltrends.com, is for Retro Realms. I think you heard me talk about this one a little bit in person, Logan. And in fact, somewhere, where is he? Where is he? There he is. If you're just listening, I'm holding up a stuffed Michael Myers from Halloween. So the idea of Retro Realms, I think, is brilliant. Right now it's 2 games, Halloween and Ash vs. Evil Dead, and they're like 16-bit style 2D action platformers. In Halloween, you can play as Michael Myers. In Ash vs. Evil Dead, you can play as Ash. And, like, they're really good 2D action platformers. It's kind of a throwback to the old, like, Aladdin days or Lion King days. They control, like, really smooth. You have, like, when you're Michael Myers, you're, like, the initial level, you're in this insane asylum. You're getting out, you're stabbing people. You have this, like, quick slide move. There's, like, wall jumps. You could, like, charge attack. So it almost moves and controls kind of like Mega Man X to an extent, which very much speaks to me.
Game.
Yeah, I know, I do. There's also like I forget what the word is for it, but there's like a dark world version of everything the entire time. And at the press of a button, you switch over to it, and it's like mostly the same, but sometimes there's barriers that are open or closed depending on which version of the world you're in. There's different enemies that are there, and you can use it to like actually try and dodge enemies and things like that. And like every inch of every level has it, and you can just flip back and forth as needed. Although when you're in the dark world version of it, you have a meter that like basically counts down and snaps you back to the other one. And so they're really fun, really cool. There's a whole like museum outside of them where you can explore props from them. But the most impressive thing about it, other than it being these two like really cool games, is that and they're separate releases, so you buy them separately, but you can play as characters from each in the opposite. So if you wanted to go into like Ash vs Evil Dead as Michael Myers and like fight through the trailer park slashing people to pieces, you can do it. And you can take Ash into that, and he's got a chainsaw hand, and he's got his shotgun, and he has like that Scrooge McDuck move where you can jump and down attack and pogo stick off of things from on your chainsaw. So like they're extremely referential of great games like this from the past, but like they have different weights, jump trajectories, different abilities, and it makes them really different. Even the little bit of like tech story is different. So like, you know, if you are Ash in the insane asylum, the little setup is different for why you're there and what's going on. Each of them has a DLC character, like Laurie Strode, which was Jamie Lee Curtis's character from the series. You can play as her in either game, and like the long-term vision or dream is that they add additional horror IP as time goes on, each with their own distinct games. I don't like, maybe they won't even necessarily be like these two action platformers, but then all of the characters you can take into any one of them, and they'll all play differently and behave differently. And so like, you know, you'll get to like run through levels using different attacks and see how those work. At the end of each level, there's even like RPG elements where you can like level up the characters, and if you find a level really hard, you can go back to previous levels and just grind them for the currencies that let you level up. It's such a great idea, and it plays so well, and it comes out in October. So like if you're looking for a really, really good spooky season game to play, I would definitely check out Halloween or Ash vs Evil Dead, which are part of Retro Realms.
Yeah, it's a cool platform. That's a really cool like
Yeah.
idea that they're doing. That it'd be fun
Day
to
one
see.
buy.
Oh,
Oh, it's
yeah,
so
Chris,
good.
you're into it?
Everything he just said and I just saw on the internet, like day one buy.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. Like the little hub world basically looks like a haunted Pizza Hut. I
love it.
even like the carpet is the like most atrocious, loudest carpet. And I asked the dev about it, and he talked about how particular they were with the design of the carpet in there. And then yeah, you can like unlock like 3D renders of items from the games, and they play with sound effects. They have descriptions. They have access to the props if they want them. They're mostly referencing like the video itself to design them. It's like these are people who love horror, and it's like I don't know how it's almost like somehow they just got the licenses, and they're like, oh my god, we can do whatever we want, and this is what they decided to do, and I love that.
Yeah, that's super, super cool. I really like that a lot. And yeah, you were talking about that one a ton. That is the one, the preview I saw Justin walk out of, and he was just like buzzing after that one. That like, yeah, I could tell he was super excited about it.
That's one
Any
of those
others you
previews
want to shout out?
where as soon as you
Oh, go
leave,
for it.
you're like, hey, it's like Geo is with Digital Trends. He's amazing. And I'm like, Geo, listen, I got to tell you about this game. I really want to write about it. And so if anybody wants to know what pitching at PAX is like, yeah, I mean, there's a plenty more. Romancing Saga 2, which I know you got to play as well. I've never played a Saga game. This was part of the Square Enix behind closed doors, but we'll be able to talk about this by the time this goes up. It's a turn-based RPG. It's got a really cool art style. Sort of the like the conceit is like there's these like seven like mighty heroes effectively that have gone bad, and so you need to take them all out, but they're so powerful that you cannot take them out in a single lifetime. So it almost has, at least from a story standpoint, kind of that Rogue's Legacy thing where, like, you know, as the king, when you pass away, you pass on your powers. And so, like, from what I can tell, you effectively play through sections as different characters, as successors, as time goes on. And it's got this really cool turn-based system that incorporates formations. And so, you know, in the demo, I think we only had like one or two formations, but the idea is like you could have a formation that has one person up front to be the tank, a few people behind doing damage, range people in back, or you might end up with a formation with more tanks if you need to be defensive or lean more towards offense. there's a lot of different weapon weaknesses. So like some people are weak to long swords, short swords, bows, great swords. You can give weapons to characters that they'll start off kind of bad with, but then they'll like develop skill with them over time. A lot of magic attacks, and the combat is really like, even though it's turn based, it moves really fast, and it's got an active time system, kind of like Final Fantasy X, where you'll see whose turn is coming up, so you can like specifically try and target somebody to take them out before they get a turn, or presumably use attacks to delay them or things like that. It's such a slick, like classic turn-based RPG, and if you're into that sort of game, this seems like it's going to be a damn good one.
Yeah, and that's Romancing Saga 2, Revenge of the Seven, I think is what that one's called. Yeah, I played that one at the Square Enix event also, but I was swept away by a different Square Enix game, Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake, which absolutely ruled. And Justin, I know you liked that one too.
I did. I've never played a Dragon Quest game before, and it has the really pretty like HD 2D style graphics, and like again, another great turn-based RPG. The little slice that I had, there were a couple of different directions you can go. I decided to go straight to the castle dungeon with the boss at the end, and
Yeah.
I liked it quite a bit. The way the combat is set up, you can either effectively, like, your party members can make their own decisions for what to do in battle, and for most of my way through this tower, that's what I did. I basically told them to, choose wisely or something like that, basically make their best calls, and I cranked the battle speed all the way up, so I'm just flying through the floor, just clearing every enemy really quickly, and then when I get to the boss at the end, which, by the way, fully voice acted, really, really funny. The comedy was extremely on point. Then I switched everybody to let me give them discrete commands, and then it was a very much like, all right, I'm going to take out his henchman. I'm going to see if I can use status effects to like put him to sleep or delay him so he doesn't wipe out my party while I take out these guys. Then it got really granular and strategic. And so, as somebody who's never played a Dragon Quest game before, I was super into this one.
Yeah, that is, you just described perfectly what pretty much every Dragon Quest is. It is funny, it is just really tight combat that can be simple and chill if you want it to be, but also really specific and intense when you're fighting a boss and you take all control of all your characters, and it was just gorgeous. I cannot wait for this game in November. It just looked totally beautiful, and it's just such a perfect fit for HD 2D. I thought it just worked so incredibly well to see this game, specifically the classic Dragon Quests, reimagined in this way. I just love it. Like, Final Fantasy just got the pixel remaster treatment. Fine. This is so much better to me. I love what they're doing here with the Dragon Quest games, and I can't wait for it. And I'm hoping that more people get into the series through this one, because 11 was a jumping on point for a ton of people, and I think this has the potential to do that as well, especially because this is the place to start. It's the third Dragon Quest, but it's the beginning of the legend chronologically. 1 and 2 follow this one up. They're coming out also next year in HD 2D as well. So this is the time if you are interested in Dragon Quest. This one's also not nearly going to be as long as 11 is. 11's 80 to 120 hours, depending on how deep you really go. This one's going to be probably 35 to 40. That's a really nice length to kind of just dip your toes into Dragon Quest, see what it's about, and then pick up 1 and 2 next year if you like it. So I was super happy with that one. I want to shout out one here that I played at the Mix, this indie event that we went to. And sorry, Chris, we're going to talk about Emio soon. I'm sorry, you're just chilling.
I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah, man. I'm excited to tell you about this one because I think you'll really like it. It's called Reggie, His Cousin, Two Scientists, and Most Likely the End of the World is the name of this game. And the short name is just Reggie. I asked the PR people, does the dev know that game is way too long? And they said, yeah, but it's just Reggie is the shortened version. And the people repping this game are actually Kit and Krista from formerly Nintendo Minute. And so I met them at this Mix event, and we chatted for a really long time about this game, and they're super nice. And this game is a 2D platformer that stars a human being that looks like a tomato, because he's from the 16,000th century and humans have evolved to just look like tomatoes. So Kit and Krista told me he's not a tomato, he's a human being. They were very specific about that. It's hilarious. And this is Kirby meets like Starfy and VVVVVV is what this game feels like. And if you don't know what VVVVVV is, it is a gravity flipping. What did you say, Chris?
I have Steam open. I just clicked add to wish list.
Oh, nice. We got it. It
like
looks
it's
so
Kirby
good.
and Starfy, and I was like, yup.
Yep. But also its main mechanic is this gravity flipping platforming, which is what VVVVVV is all about. Is you aren't actually really jumping with your character, you're just flipping gravity for them. So you're walking on the ground, you hit the face button, and there's very few controls in this game. Basically, it's face buttons do one thing and shoulder buttons do another, and that is it. But it controls really well. And so you hit that button, gravity flips, and you're heading towards the ceiling. You hit it again midair, and then he starts to turn downwards and head back towards the ground again. But there's a limit to how many times you can do it. And the more you hit it without landing on an enemy midair and bouncing off of them, or landing on the ground to kind of reset your momentum, you start to just lose that flow. So you're flipping and he's just chugging slower and slower and slower until he eventually lands. And so there's this Kaizo level I did at the very end of their demo where there's these spears that are retracting back and forth, and you were just flipping gravity through this thing, and it's crazy. It's almost like a bullet hell at times with how intense it gets. And you see this platform you have to try and land on before you lose all your momentum as these things are chasing you, and it gets really, really intense. It's a beautiful hand-drawn art style. You know I love 2D platformers. This one is going to be really, really cool. And it is coming to Switch. It's coming to Steam. It's coming out next year. And it's made by two guys who just love Nintendo. They love Nintendo games. They love Donkey Kong. They love Kirby. They love Mario. And they were trying to make a platformer that takes a little bit from all of those. And I think they nailed it. So if you're a Nintendo fan, which you definitely are if you're listening to this show, look at Reggie, his cousin, two scientists, and most likely The End of the World, because that was one of the coolest games that I saw. Justin, I'll let you shout out one more if you have any more.
I got one more I want to talk about.
Right.
And this will come as a surprise to people who know the things that I like and the things that I don't like. There's 3. And as somebody who, again, is on the record as not being a fan of scary games for the very important reason that they scare me, I thought it was so good. It was a 2-player demo, me and one other person who I did not know, each on a controller, each going through an early section of the game, solving puzzles in tandem. And
so this is a multiplayer. This is a 2-player game. Mm-hmm. Oh, cool.
2-player co-op, yeah. And like the dirty, dusty, like faded art is so spectacular. You know, your characters, you're in this like abandoned like toy factory. Well, I'll say abandoned, but like there's giant grotesque people or like automatons, I can't tell exactly what they are, who are working there and doing things. There's this like giant lady with this like beehive hair and all these arms that you're trying to avoid, who caught me too many times. And you're solving puzzles in tandem, and the two characters, and I forget their names, each have slightly different abilities. One has a bow and arrow, one has a big wrench that you can use for whacking things. So as you go from area to area, some of it is figuring out like which thing you should use where, who's the right person to use what. There's certain hatches that you open that require both of you, or certain points where you need to help one person up to another area. So it's kind of like Spooky It Takes Two. Cool. And it's so good. It's so atmospheric. It's like, I don't know if you ever saw the movie. There's like this animated movie a bunch of years ago called 9, starring like I think Elijah Wood.
Yes.
And my God, I was like, if they ever make a video game of that, it's just got to be this in this style, because it was so like impeccably spot on for just the vibes and the feel of that. So if you are like me and have a low tolerance for spooky, know that while this is spooky, it is not so scary that you can't get through it. You're not going to be in terror the entire time. And the gameplay and puzzle solving in particular are so good, it is worth being a little bit brave for.
I am in exactly that boat. I can't handle that many scary games, and Little Nightmares has been catching my eye a lot. And Reanimal, the new game from that studio, that's coming out.
Which I thought was Little Nightmares when they showed the trailer for the first time at Gamescom.
Yeah, very, very similar. But yeah, so I'm psyched about that, and glad to hear that it has your stamp of approval, because that sounds like something I'll really want to check out. PAX was so much fun, though. Justin and I hung out all weekend, which was just a blast to get 2/3 of the boardroom together in person, and then met a ton of awesome people, including Felix from Nintendo Life, who, if you're listening, you may also be a fan of
so
Nintendo
jealous.
Life. And we met in the media room, and we both had like 30 minutes till our next appointment, and so we broke out Mario Kart and Mario Party. And Felix says, I don't know if you're going to be able to beat me at Mario Kart. I'm pretty good at Mario Kart 8. And I said, okay, bet, let's see. And we did 4 200cc races, and I narrowly came out on top 3 races to 1. So we got first and second in all 4 of them, and it was a nail-biter every time. But super fun.
King, you best not miss.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was worried, because it's like, all right, I don't know. He's pretty good. I bet he's pretty good. And he was, but my Mario Kart rep remains untarnished.
You two I think are around the same age. Like he always talks about how Mario Kart Wii was like his game growing up.
Yeah, he's a
Or
few
Nintendo
years
Life.
younger than me. I'm now getting to that point where there are people younger than me at these things. I'm
Okay.
like, you grew up with the Wii? Well, I grew up with the GameCube. That's crazy. Like, yeah, we're getting to
That's
that point.
crazy.
But
I,
yeah.
I grew up with hoop and stick, so so did I.
Oh, come on. But it
Ball
was
in
super
cup.
fun.
Right.
We'll have to get Shriver out here to PAX West one of these years.
Shrives, you got to.
Come
I
on,
know.
Shrives.
I gotta bank
East.
the vacation days and the money
Mhm.
to do it.
Yeah,
But
it will be a total blast if you ever come out. Super fun time at PAX West. I think we both left a couple of smiling men, which leads us to Emio the Smiling Man, Famicom Detective Club. Chris, you have been playing it. What do you think, and how far are you?
I'm not far, so I've been playing I played the demo, all the different chapters there, and like I have it here. It's still new sealed, sitting on my desk here. But I was like, you know what, I should give this a shot in case I don't like it. And I agree a lot with what you said previously the last time you and I talked about it on the show, where it is pretty obtuse in like uh, they have the gameplay is like very simplistic. Like the
Hmm.
story has to carry it, and that was kind of my question for you. Like, because if the story isn't like gripping, then I really don't understand why anyone would stick with this game. Like it is so simplistic in what is available to you in terms of like navigating the menu. Like, oh, gee, maybe I like. It's never clear what you should do next, and until you hit that one prompt that's like, maybe you should say something, and then you have to like, go to like
Hmm.
the whatever the option is where you can talk to somebody, um, or speak up or whatever. Um, Whereas other visual novel games that I've played, Danganronpa, like they have you there's break in the what I'll call the monotony. Like I understand it's a visual novel, but at some
Yeah.
point, like
Hmm.
I appreciate those games for having those where like you're going around hallways and like you're finding clues. Or the example I gave in the boardroom private channel was I'm a huge fan of Persona 4 Dancing All Night. I think it's one of the best games, like one of the best Persona games to have ever come out.
Really?
I've played it like 2 or 3 times, and platinumed it 2 or 3 times. Um, it's I think that game is amazing. Um, and it is enough where it's like the story there I think is interesting enough to keep you engaged, but like there's a rhythm game in between it, so like you kind of come like you pull your head out of the water and it's like, okay, like there's something else for me to
Yeah.
do here.
Hmm.
Emio doesn't really have that, at least from what I've seen so far, and I kind of don't get. It's not for me. Yeah, I'll say that.
Yeah. Yeah, like Ace Attorney has its courtroom, Leighton has its puzzles, Danganronpa has some investigations, and then there's just like Emio doesn't have much of that stuff. And
Yeah,
there can be visual novels that are just really not that interactive that you do just kind of click through, and that's fine. And I think that would have actually benefited this even more than its attempts at gameplay, which is just the fumbling around
yeah.
trying to find the way to
It gets
progress.
in the way of it. Like,
Yeah.
what was the uh Doki Doki Literature Club? I feel like
Yeah.
that game is pretty simple, and like you can get through it in about like 4 or 5 hours. I haven't played the extended one, but even that is like there's not a whole lot going on there, but the story is interesting enough
Yeah.
that it presents it to you in a way that like it doesn't get in its own way, and I feel like this does.
It's disappointing that every conversation I have about this game goes this way because I'm almost done with it and the story is really good. It's
Is it
really
really?
good. I like it a lot. We'll see if it sticks the landing because I am 2 chapters from the end and it is still actively setting things up and hasn't really started knocking them down yet. So we'll see if it can follow through on that and give some satisfying resolutions. But this game is tense. I wouldn't say it's really that scary or horror, but it is just tense. And there are some cutscenes later on that I'm just holding my breath trying to look away from the screen because what's happening is just I gotta breathe and catch my breath. It's super intense and really cool, and I like what they're doing a lot. And there have been at times 6 different people where I'm like, "You're Emio, no, you're Emio," and I don't know who it's gonna end up being, and that's really really cool. And I like a lot of the characters. I like a lot of the detectives that you're interacting with. I think it's gorgeous. I think some of the city that you're exploring later on, I just love the hand drawn art and just it is dripping in a lot of really cool atmosphere at times that I do really like. I would be glowing about this game if it was just a little bit more fun and less cumbersome to navigate through. But instead, I just like it. I like it more than I did when I talked about it 2 weeks ago when I was only
Good.
about as far as Chris was, because that was still the very opening chapters of this thing. But the point I've gotten to now, I really am happy they made this thing. I just wish that they had fixed the gameplay a little more and didn't. If you told me this was a remake of an NES one, I'd be like, yep, I believe you. I totally
Yeah.
believe that this is a remake of an NES game, but I wish that wasn't the case. I thought this was an opportunity for them to leap forward a little bit. Instead, they just made another really good entry in this series from 35 years ago. So I don't know how you take that, Chris, as a recommendation to continue or not.
I feel like
Honestly,
I
and
need to see, like, if you come out and you're like, yeah, the ending sucked, like, I probably won't
yeah,
pursue it. Like,
yeah.
I'll just be like, cool,
Mhm.
thanks for saving me. The 12-hour. How many hours do you have in this thing?
Probably 7 or 8, and probably two or
Okay,
three to go.
yeah, it's not terrible.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it's not terribly long.
can I tell you who I think it is?
Sure, yeah.
I think it's the. I mean, obviously the beginning, but like, the detective that you're with, the younger guy who's like, I mean, at the beginning he basically tells you like, um, it was 20 years ago. We never found the guy. He has purple eyes. That's the only reason I think it's him.
Okay,
I have a
okay.
theory. I think it's the dude with the bag.
I think so too. I think it's the guy wearing the bag.
Nailed it.
That's a great theory, Justin. Chris, we'll see if you're right. I still don't know. I still don't know the
Uh-oh.
answer to that. Yeah. But I'm excited to finish it. I'm probably going to actually go do that right after we're done with the show because I just want to see what happens because I am really invested in it. And when we talk about it, it sounds like I'm not that high on it because I don't think the gameplay is good. I really don't. But I'm a sucker for mystery adventure stories like this, so I really, really like that part of it. And yeah, there's great characters, great writing, but yeah, I hope they make another one of these and just continue to evolve it a little bit. But I'm glad you tried it out, Chris, because yeah, I wanted to hear what someone else on the show thought of it. But this is to both of you guys. There's a visual novel collection coming out this week that I can recommend wholeheartedly, and that's the Ace Attorney Investigations collection. The review roundup for those just dropped, and it got immaculate scores, because of course it did, because those games rule. So yeah, Ace Attorney is the place that Justin should continue his visual novel journey.
We'll see.
Yeah, okay, we'll see. Last thing we'll talk about here, and then maybe we'll squeak in one question. We're starting to run a little long. But I wanted to mention that Nintendo of America dropped a new Mario and Luigi Brothership trailer. This thing's just 30 seconds long, and it introduces Concordia, which is a new location that the brothers explore in this game, with a bunch of islands: Rumbla Island, Twisty Island, Lot of Coins Island, and Desolate Island. Great, it's not spelled how you think. Just really great island names there. Chris, what'd you think of this trailer?
I'm way more excited
Excuse me,
about
that's
this
loud.
game. Oh.
Yeah,
I'm way more excited about this game than I thought I would be. But I'm kind of nervous because I feel like I'm not going to have time to see it to the end because I never do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really seems like they're like really rebooting this thing though.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like when I think of Mario and Luigi games, I don't think of this, and in a good way. Like this really does seem like an evolution of the franchise.
How about you, Justin?
Honestly, the big open explorable areas that you can jump and platform around in 3D kind of reminds me of Super Mario RPG. So yeah, it did in fact enhance my excitement for it. An unfortunate day though for Nintendo to talk about Concordia the same day that we found out, like maybe an hour after it was announced that Concord was shutting down, which a lot of people took as a bit of
We
a
have
dig. But
Concordia
certainly
at home.
Yeah.
I think this game looks amazing. I think it looks so good. And yeah, it just looks like what you would dream a home console Mario and Luigi would look like. It is not necessarily a reinvention, but just like, yeah, this is a home console, bigger budget, gorgeous, fleshed out version of the worlds I explored on Game Boy Advance and DS. It looks incredible. And yeah, the Mario and Luigi platforming, them turning into the UFO together, them spinning on the flowers together. This just looks like blown up stuff of what you do in these games. And
They're
yeah, when I
so
played,
distinct.
yeah, it looks gorgeous too. The islands just look amazing. And Justin, when I played Mario RPG last year, my main thought was, wow, Mario and Luigi is really the sequel series to this, even more so than Paper Mario. It just really is. So, Justin, I think you would really, really like this game when it comes out. If it's good, remains to be seen. But
I think it's gonna be good.
yeah, I think so too. I got faith in them. But this game looks awesome, and I love that we finally made it. We're through all the summer releases, and we're to the point where the next 3 games we're getting are Zelda, Mario Party, and Mario and Luigi. And I cannot wait to see how they all turn out. So yeah, go check out that trailer. It was just a really quick 30 seconds. Oh, I don't think we got time for a question because the 3 we have are all really in depth. They're really, really in depth and would probably take a while each. So I don't know. Up to you guys.
We could do Mark's. We could do Mark's.
Okay.
That's easy.
We'll do Mark's question here. Mark emailed toadstoolboardroom@gmail.com and asked, I know this is old ground you covered before, but I'm seriously considering going all digital with the next version of the Switch. The thing that pushed me over the edge is the uptake of is it the MIG? Is that how you would say this, Chris? I don't know.
Yeah, it's MIG or MIG. Everyone's calling it MIG.
Yeah. The MIG Switch cartridge. From what I've read, if someone copies your cartridge and uses it on the MIG Switch cartridge at the same time as you are using the original game, Nintendo could register that the same game is being used at the same time, and they could brick your system. Could this happen? If so, how could I ever buy a secondhand Switch cartridge again? The one I buy may have been copied, and that copy could have been passed around hundreds of times. When I buy new games, they usually come without shrink wrap. I'm going to start asking for shrink wrapped games from now on. Are you buying what at like GameStop when they don't wrap them?
Yeah, GameStop always rips it off for some
when
reason.
They do that.
I hate that.
Yeah, that makes me so angry. It's not new anymore if you've unwrapped it. Like, come on, guys. Yeah. Anyways, Mark says, what if someone took a quick copy of the game and then the same thing happens as with a used games? That combined with the fact that most physical games come with a day one patch means that you still have to download a portion of the game digitally anyways. This means your physical game will be the inferior version if Nintendo ever shuts down the eShop. Am I being too worried, or do you think this is all valid? And Chris, I'm guessing this question has you written all over it.
It does. Yes. So there's a few things here. So as far as the current Switch, yeah, you should be super concerned. You shouldn't buy used Switch games anymore. Period. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think it's a smart investment. If you are this concerned about it, just avoid the problem altogether. Only buy new. It's a crappy situation, but it's the reality of the situation. Wait, you deleted it.
Oh, sorry. I was just keeping track
Control
of which
Z.
ones we'd used.
Control Z, man. Thank you. Yeah, unfortunately, you're exactly right. Each Switch cartridge, my understanding is it basically has a certificate on it, and that certificate gets ripped off with the MIG cartridge. They made a dumper for it, so you basically dump the cartridge. It has that cert, and then like the uniqueness is gone. So really, the risk is like if Bobby trades in his dumped copy of Mario Odyssey, and you and him are playing it online at the same time. That's where the risk comes. So like anything that's online, first and foremost, or something that someone's going to dump a lot of hours into, like a Tears of the Kingdom, that's not a game that you want to ever buy used. If money is like the real thing here. As far as the sequel is concerned, you've got to imagine they're using different, or you would hope that they're going to be using different form factor for their games, or that they've patched this out. I wouldn't be surprised if this was something that Nintendo came across toward the tail end of the Switch 2's development, and they quickly had to pivot, whatever security for the games that they were putting in at the last minute, or change how they were doing it in some way, shape, or form. We don't know that yet. That remains to be seen. So I don't know if you can necessarily make a decision yet on whether or not you're going to be going all physical or all digital, because we don't really know what the Switch 2 is going to be doing. In that part of the conversation, I would just say sit tight and see what happens. The other thing I will bring up is there are a number of, and this is more of a fun fact kind of thing, there are a number of Switch games out there that have more than one SKU for the cartridge, or like version cartridges that are out there. So like Metroid Dread, there's one that is like the base one that just ships with like the pre-day one patch, and then there's one that includes like whatever that crazy hard mode is.
The one hit mode.
That one hit mode. It's like pre-patched onto the cartridge. So like some people go as far as trading in the old cartridge and then getting the new one that has that patch on there in case the eShop is like gone someday and you can never get that back. Depends on how much you care about that. Depends on how much you like the game. Tears of the Kingdom is another one. I imagine that the cartridges that they're printing now don't have the duplication glitch in it. That's probably been patched out. Yeah. So stuff like that is all things, and you can look all that up online. I'm sure somewhere there's like a database of like here's the model that you need, because there's ID tags on every Switch cartridge that you buy, and you can easily identify those. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, nice. Thanks, Chris. I'm torn on the next console too. What I'm gonna do? I might go all digital. This might be the generation that I make the leap. We'll see.
I have
It's
been
just
all digital for many years. One of the best choices I ever made.
yeah, I'm almost there. And
I'm close.
oh, really? I wouldn't have guessed you were close.
I'm close because of Steam. Like, I'm at a point
Mm-hmm.
now where almost every game I buy, if it's multi-platform, I'm buying it on Steam. And I'm kind of like, if I'm doing it here, why aren't I doing it anywhere else? Like, I'm buying Astrobot physical for some reason, and I'm like, I really don't know what that reason is anymore. With Switch, it's like, well, it's Nintendo. I've always bought Nintendo physical, and I don't know. The next generation, I'm kind of like, do I care? Like, it's great if my nephews want to borrow it, but that's probably the only reason at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, borrowing is great, and then yeah, for me, they just trained me in the 3DS Wii U era, where they're like, if you lose your system, you lose all your digital games, because it wasn't tied to your account like they are now. And then I just continued that thread through on the Switch, and I don't do it for PlayStation. I do it for Switch though, because that game is there all on the cart. But for me, one of the big reasons now is I feel like I need to do it at the start of the next generation, because of my obsessive brain being like, well, I can't have half of my library of Switch digital and half of it physical, so I just got to make the leap when the new thing starts. Because right now it's like, I review Princess Peach Showtime, I get a digital copy of that for review. It's like, well, now I'm just missing that on my shelf when everything else is there. I feel like stupid enough to go and get a copy of it, which is not rational. Justin's shaking his head at me, and I deserve it, so I'm probably going all digital on the next thing, except Zelda. I will always buy a physical copy of a Zelda game if they make it. Forever.
Yeah, you could do what I do, where you buy Zelda digitally, but also buy the collector's edition, so that you end
I
up
will
with
probably
two
do
of it.
that. Yeah, absolutely. All right, that is all. That's another episode of the Toadstool Boardroom in the books. We're a weekly Nintendo show here Thursdays, noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, video version on YouTube, audio anywhere you like to listen to your podcast. You can follow the show on Twitter at ToadstoolBR. Send us an email, toadstoolboardroom@gmail.com. Join the show's Discord server, link in the description of every episode. Justin, where can people find you, and what do you want to plug?
You can find me on Twitter at KOREIS. If you go to digitaltrends.com, by the time that this airs, you should be able to see my write-up about Retro Realms and Halloween Ash vs. Evil Dead. And then hopefully by the end of the week, you'll see a collaborative piece I did with our friend Jess at Digital Trends for the best games we saw at PAX West 2024. So check that out. There's some good ones.
Including Zelda, probably the best game you saw at PAX, right?
Yes, although that won't make the roundup because it has a giant standalone preview piece. It doesn't really need the I will say,
extra juice.
nobody needs a single paragraph blurb that Zelda is good. That helps nobody. Although I may have snuck Monster Hunter in there.
Nice. Yeah, that was super fun. Chris, where can people find you?
You can find me at Shrogs93. I've been tinkering a lot with this giant CRT that I put on a hand truck to get down here over the past couple days. If you have any retro games that you recommend, please let me know. Or if you have any setup things like gotchas, let me know, because I'm very focused on that right now. Otherwise, over the weekend I'm going to be playing Astrobot when I'm not at the Killers concert.
Oh, have fun with both of those. That sounds like a great weekend. A killer weekend. Sorry. I'm turning into Justin. It's happening. I can't wait to dive into Astrobot. I'm also going to be playing that all weekend. You can find me on Twitter at LoganJPlant. It's not up yet, but I am writing a preview of Dragon Quest III 2D HD 2D, and I'm excited to talk more about that, because I got to beat the drum for that game because it's so much fun. Once again, find the show on Twitter at ToadstoolBR. We should try and post from there more often. We don't as often as we should.
We don't. Yeah. I feel like that's my fault.
No, it's not.
It's fine.
It's not. You do enough. You do more than enough. All right, but for now, that's all the time I've got. I got to get back to playing Animal Crossing New Leaf on my Nintendo 3DS. Have a great week. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you next time right here in the Toadstool Boardroom.